What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another game day update. I'm Kelcey. I'm joined from New York, Brooklyn, New York. Right? Alex Schiffer is the Brooklyn Nets beat writer for the Athletic. Alex, thank you for joining me today. Are you excited for the matchup this evening?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be an interesting one. It's the Nets' first game since Kevin Durant kind of called out the team a little bit for having a bleeped up attitude against the Clippers and blowing a 13-point lead. And then it's their last game before Kyrie Irving rejoins the team. So kind of a interesting little game in the middle of what should be a unique week for the Nets.
Yeah, wow. So the Kyrie news obviously is important, not if you're a Grizzlies fan, because it looks like he is good to go for the away game happening next, because obviously still not with the home games. But I'm going to give it a go real quick for the Grizzlies. We always start these with like, who the heck is playing tonight? Because we know that injuries and COVID protocol just like switches up the roster every 4 seconds. So the Grizzlies tonight, Alex, are without 8 guys. This includes 3 guys that obviously have a really big role with the team. That's Kyle Anderson, Dylan Brooks, and D'Anthony Melton. All guys that I would say would be guarding someone like KD, someone like Harden. Who steps up and stops these two superstars tonight?
It's a good question. I mean, you look at the rest of their personnel, JJJ is good to go, right?
Yep.
So he's probably someone I would look at that has a chance. He's got the length to stay in front of those guys, but I mean, also you look at the way Kevin's built and how quick he is for a guy his size. That could be a tough matchup. There isn't really, I think, a great guy on the roster in terms of length and build. So I mean, you have to think they're going to be doubling a lot and kind of going by committee to kind of see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we're going to see a lot of guys who haven't necessarily had a lot of minutes play in tonight's game being down 8 guys. I think if you're a Grizzlies fan, you're getting familiar with Killian Tilly, who just signed
Great
a
name.
deal with the Grizzlies. You're also probably going to see maybe Jarrett Culver step up because there just is no wings right now available for the Grizzlies. But we obviously, so the headlines with the Nets right now are Harden and KD, right? Like those are the two superstars. But Patty Mills is having himself a season, especially beyond the 3-point line.
He's kind of been the revelation of this team. Joe Harris has been out for over a month due to ankle surgery. He obviously is one of the league's best 3-point shooters, but Patty Mills has already made over 100 threes. He's having a career year, and he's kind of been I don't want to say the unsung hero for this team, but around the NBA maybe the unsung hero for the Nets, just because he gets a shot off so quick. They've had him run some point guard at times when they've really needed him to. And to me, we mentioned that Clippers game. I mean, he fouled out with, I want to say, about 4:47 left. And, once he fouled out, Kevin Durant said the Clippers were saying, now they're down to 2 shooters, right? KD and Harden. And they were just doubling those two the rest of the game and making the Nets role players beat them. And they didn't. I mean, James Johnson missed a wide open 3 that would have given them the lead with 42 seconds left. And then they just really didn't have a lot going on after that. So I just think that he's been so important to them to keep them afloat without Kyrie Irving and Joe Harris. And when Kyrie's back, I mean, them on the road, Patty Mills playing alongside those guys, they'd be a little small with Kyrie and Patty out there, but the looks he's going to get with the big 3 are just going to be ridiculous.
Now, if you're looking at guarding these, I'm going to call them the big 3 right now because Kyrie is not back. If you're a defense coming in trying to stop or guard these 3, is there a defense that you've seen this season that has given them the most trouble?
I don't know if I'd say one over the other. I would say more of just, I mean, Patty Mills is easily the streakiest of those 3.
Mm-hmm.
He's had some slumps this year where, his 3-point shooting's dipped into like the low 30s and maybe even high 20s. And he's obviously the easiest one to take away of the 3. I mean, Kevin Durant, 7 foot, James Harden, 6'5", built like a football player. Patty's, about 6'1". So I think when he has foul trouble or has a tough shooting night, you're just able to focus more on the 2 stars. I mean, that's kind of what the Clippers did, was just doubling those 2 as much as you can and cutting off their driving lanes. So I think the success defenses have had is just kind of like the Clippers have get the role guys to beat you. I mean, there's not a lot of shooters. You really need them. They have a lot of drivers, so you really need them to get to the basket if you want them to be effective against you. And when Patty is not hot, I think that's when they're at their most vulnerable.
All right. And now I'm going to flip a switch on you, Alex, because the Nets have a top 5 defensive rating. But the Grizzlies are playing real good right now. It's like, and this is not making excuses. Out 8 guys are still winning and still continuing to look good. So the big 3 currently right now is John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Desmond Bane. How do they play those 3?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what they do against Ja. You know, Patty Mills is kind of built for his frame. He's a pest defensively. Bruce Brown and Javon Carter, who's their playing time can fluctuate more. I mean, they're basically really good on-ball defenders. Something interesting I'm curious to see. I don't know if you know this. Nick Claxton and John Morant were AAU teammates back in the day.
I saw your article about that.
Yeah, I wrote that a week before the country show shut down. I jumped the gun on that one, but you know it's just never really worked out timing wise. But Nick Claxton is easily the Nets' most versatile defender, even at 6'11".
Mhm.
And while he's about got a foot on his longtime friend, I'm sure that they're gonna want a piece of each other. So I definitely see a lot of Bruce Brown or Javon Carter on Ja. Definitely a lot of Claxton on JJJ, and then Bane is interesting to me. I loved him first off coming out of college. I thought he'd be a guy the Nets might look at, but he's an interesting one to me just because they have DeAndre Bembry, who's kind of fits that build of I think Bane's about 6'5", 6'6", right?
Yeah.
So he can kind of match that length pretty well and is a pretty good defender. And then they also have guys like James Johnson, who had a little bigger at 6'9", but also just physical, beat you up and can throw him on there too. So I think they have the personnel to match them pretty well. Ja's just so dynamic. I'm kind of curious to see, what they throw at him because I mean they have guys that can match his size, but he hasn't been a problem for him before.
No, absolutely not. Okay, before we end up real quick, you have to choose one player on the Brooklyn Nets who is like your player to watch tonight. You think he's going to have a good game?
It's a good question. I would say Bruce Brown or Patty Mills just because Bruce Brown didn't have a good game against the Clippers and he kind of gives them an interesting cog to their offense in that short roll to the basket type role where he's setting a screen for James, he's coming off, and then he can also either go to his floater or just kind of play make out of it. So when he is going, it adds another dimension to their offense, and they just didn't have that against the Clippers. I think that could have been the difference. Patty played great, but when he fouled out, obviously that was the beginning of the end for them. So I'm kind of curious, just do they protect him more with the foul trouble because of how key he needs to be down the stretch, or do they try to find different ways to maybe keep him away from contact or manage his minutes better just to make sure he's not picking up that second one? Because he kind of is one of those guys where once he picks up a quick one, that he's more likely to pick up the second one right after picking up the first.
It's a lot like Jaren.
Exactly. So I'd say one of those 2 guys, just because again, Kevin Durant was very animated after the loss of the Clippers, and you just those guys all heard that, and you have to wonder who took that message the most personal.
All right, my player for the game is going to be John Morant. I feel like whenever he is up against superstars, he ups his play as well. So I think it's going to be a really fun game to watch. Everyone, if you're watching from Memphis, it tips off at 6:30 p.m. You can watch it on Valley Sports Southeast. Obviously, if you're watching from the Eastern time zone, that's a 7:30 tip-off game. Alex, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you good luck. I do not wish the Nets good luck, but thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Kelcey.